What's up, fellas? Good to see you guys again for a random edition of the BGO Blind Pig. Courtesy of bgobsession.com. Figured we would jump on and there's a couple topics to talk about. But before we get rolling, we can do quick intros. Top left is John. He hails as Boone. Bottom left is Chris. He hails as Chris. Bottom right is Bob. He can find him at Neophyte. And I hail as Silent Threat, also known as Derek. So come on by the board. Please feel free to hang out, mix it up, have some conversations. We like the positive conversations, and to mix it up with anybody who listens, like, share, follow, all that good stuff that everybody else says on their TikToks and social media. So, John, you were the one that pulled this one together tonight.
I told these guys I was lonely. My wife is out of town, so I thought there's actually quite a little bit to talk about. But I wanted to mention one thing. I had this really amazing experience. My brother lives in Charlotte, and he invited me down. I think it's the second year for the the Charlotte Football Club in the MLS ranks, and they had a winning season last year, but it was their opener last weekend, and I went down there. And the only reason I bring it up, usually Bob's the one that's talking about soccer, European soccer and American soccer, but I'm a big soccer guy. I've always been a big soccer guy, but the reason I wanted to bring it up is this is the opener of an American Charlotte, a basically a small soccer team in Charlotte. They had 70,000 fans in attendance. It's their second year. They had something called the Blue Furies, which is basically a cheerleading squad of like 30,000 people chanting and singing and waving banners the entire game. I never sat down. And they lost the game. It wasn't like it was some 6-0 match. They lost the game, a tight game. They actually scored on themselves a couple times, which is not helpful. But it just made me. I was both ecstatic and sad at the same time, because I thought this is a second year soccer franchise in a major American city. It's not the U.S. American team, men's national team. It's a MLS team, and the energy in that stadium blew away anything I've ever seen in my adult lifetime as a Washington Redskins / WFT / Commanders fan. I don't know. It just really struck me, and it made me think, if we can ever shed the demons that Dan Snyder has brought upon this franchise, it'll be a beautiful thing.
Well, I was going to ask you the true question in trying to quantify the experience was, did chants of "fuck Dan Snyder" break out like they did?
No, but I will say this. Charlotte, there are a lot of disgruntled old Redskins fans in Charlotte. When I've gone to Panthers games, it's been about, with Washington, it's been about 50-50, the crowd. So I probably could have gotten it going if I'd tried. But I'll save that for the next time.
How many kids in the crowd, John?
How many what?
How many children in the crowd?
Mostly adults. So
really?
I know a lot of times it's like, they give the tickets away, and it's like a bunch of youth soccer leagues, but it was mostly young people, a lot of Hispanic. There's a big Hispanic pro soccer contingent in Charlotte. But I mean, I wish you guys could have been there with me, because it just blew me away. I was like, holy shit. It's been so long since I went to an event where the crowd, regardless of whether the team was going to be top of the league, where they were so into it. And my brother brought me a jersey. So, I'm kind of bummed because they've lost their first two games. So I'm probably getting sucked into more misery, which I'm not sure I can take.
I get a higher draft pick though. So it's okay.
But anyway, it was exciting. And then I'm sorry to talk so much, but the other thing I wanted to update you guys on was we did a fundraising effort for this Ukrainian family, the father Mark and his two daughters Alina and Anna, who my friend is hosting for the next couple of years. And we were able to raise like $6,100. And my friend Donovan gave Mark the money on Friday, and she said he just basically, the tears were streaming down his face. And that's not a lot of money for most of us in America. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not life-changing. but it's probably going to allow him to like buy a vehicle, a decent, reliable vehicle, so that he can get a job and start. You can imagine how hard it is to come to a place and just be totally dependent on strangers to take care of you and your daughters. And he's a younger guy, so I think that's probably why he was so emotional about it. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys. I know you gave money, you helped, put the link out there. And I will say this: we actually had a lot of total strangers contribute, which that tells you something about Americans in general. Is that it's pretty rare that people just out of the blue don't know the person, don't know anything about the situation, that they'll donate their money. And we had quite a bit of that. So thank you guys. And that was made me feel good. And I hope you guys feel good.
Very good.
Very cool.
That's enough talking for me for the rest of the night.
Yeah, that'll last about 3 minutes.
To circle back around your soccer experience, 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I actually went to a Capitals game. And 30 seconds into the first period, we had ushers telling us we were not allowed to stand during the course of the game. It was the most depressing thing I've ever experienced.
Too much enthusiasm.
I have grown up going to Caps games. I've been to multiple playoff games, including multiple game sevens, years ago before, I had kids and I could afford that kind of stuff. But to go into a stadium like that where home field advantage is legitimate, and it's tangible, and you have Alex Ovechkin, who's arguably the best shooter to ever touch a professional hockey rink, and you're told that you're not allowed to stand because you might block the view behind you. I guess to your point, John, that's the divide. That's the same. I had the same thing happen to me at a Redskins game. Third quarter, it was third down against the Niners a couple years ago when CJ Beathard was their quarterback, and we were. I want to say we were kind of streaking to try to make a late playoff bid. It might have even been the year before we won the division, but we were told to sit down because they were afraid that we were going to block. So the mentality in sport is it's deteriorating, unfortunately.
Well, maybe one day we'll get back to that level of excitement, at a Washington State football stadium. I hope we do.
Did you see the Defenders game this weekend? It was packed. It was standing room only. Like, I hate to be that way, but that's literally where F you Dan Snyder chant started coming out. Like, it was you could hear it on television. It was so loud. And that's only got 18,000 people at Audi Field. It's a soccer field for the DC United. So it's there. The fan base is there. I don't think anybody can argue that. But limitations and worrying about hurting people's feelings, I guess, it kind of destroys that. So you do wonder how much of that affects every game. But anyways, we can talk football if you want instead of.
We were talking football. You mean I'm sorry. You mean we can talk NFL football?
NFL football,
not football.
So, Chris, I know you said you didn't want to get deep into it, and we're not going to debate this because, like we said before we got on here, 30 seconds or less, why don't you want or think Lamar Jackson is coming to this team?
Okay, it's not that I don't want. I'm not gonna call out somebody else's points and use them as my own. I thought Kime nailed it today on his pod with Snyder. He said, we don't have the money. Because there is no money. And even if there was the money, because there's no way Baltimore is going to allow him to come down basically in a very similar close market where they have stolen a lot of fans from the Redskins or the Washington team and allow him to drive down, the BW Parkway and play in Washington. And I don't believe there's collusion either. I think it's strictly that, Lamar's representing himself. He wants more than they're offering. And they're allowing the market to decide what it is. They told him, go ahead, we're going to tag you. We're going to let other teams give you offers. And he doesn't think anyone's going to give him any more than they will. And if they do, then they'll probably pay him. But I mean, Twitter, my God, over the last 2-3 days is just Lamar Jackson on steroids. And it's not happening. And it doesn't mean I don't like him or I don't think he's a good football player. He's just not coming. So I'm not wasting any oxygen on him.
See, and I'm in the I don't want him camp.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy. And would he make our offense better? Would our offense have been better this year with Lamar Jackson? Yes, absolutely. But no, thank you. I'm not interested. Number one, the guy's coming off 2 years where he's finished on IR because of the way he plays. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, seen the movie. It doesn't end well. It doesn't end well. On top of that, the guy's got what, 4 years in now? He's averaging 174 yards a game. And I know there are a lot of passing yards a game, I guess I should say, because he's damn near averaging 174 yards rushing a game, right? Yeah, that's a little hyperbole, but not a lot. The detractors are going to say, well, he's been playing with the cheapest wide receiver core in the NFL. Guess what? Tom Brady played with the cheapest wide receiver core in the NFL for a long time and made hay. Yes, he's the GOAT, but no, sorry, not what we need here. We don't need a guy that's going to give us 12 out of 17 games. We've seen that. We don't need a guy that is only going to throw for 174 yards, especially when you have this many mouths to feed that we already have. You also aren't going to ask Eric Bieniemy to downgrade from Patrick Mahomes, who can do more with a wrist flip than most starting quarterbacks, including Lamar Jackson, can do with a full arm. I don't see it. I don't see, on top of that, I don't see a team with holes as big as Washington has right now, giving up 2 first-round draft picks. And there's no way in the world Baltimore is going to take less than 2 first-round draft picks from Washington for Lamar Jackson, even if we're willing to pay him, and even if they decide, because I agree with Chris, I don't think they are going to be willing to let him drive an hour down the Baltimore-Washington Parkway and play in D.C. I just don't think Baltimore is going to be willing to do that.
I'd like to just quickly add something that I didn't add before. I don't believe Lamar Jackson is a great thrower of the football. But, and I'm going to tie this into the other Twitter thing that's driven me crazy over the last week or so. He is Joe Montana when you compare him to the young man coming out of Florida, Anthony Richardson. And he's going to probably, you watch, Richardson will end up he'll be a top 5 pick.
Top 10 at worst, but yeah, very possible.
And I've watched him play. Particularly, I'm a big Florida State fan. I watched the
combine, man. The combine leads a lot of teams into areas they probably should stay away from. But I'm with you guys.
He's a great athlete. It's not a quarterback.
I'm not really pining for Jackson. And my thing is, Baltimore offered him a shit ton of money, and we're not really in a position to offer that money. But even if we were, I just feel like, we've got Sam Howell. I know people say it's one game, but we drafted the kid. He looked great the one chance he got, and it's not his fault he only got one game. That's on Ron Rivera. He could have had 4 or 5 games, and I suspect we'd have seen a lot of the same thing we saw against Dallas. But I just for once want to see us commit to the guys we drafted. We didn't do it with Kirk Cousins. We made that change late, and we half-assed made the change, and we never really, I feel like if we'd have showed him the love, he'd still be playing in Washington. So I just want to see what Howell's got, and I think that we can do a ton of good with the money that we would spend on and the picks we would spend on to get Jackson. And let's just see what we can do. Let's build it from the ground up. Let's not revert back to the 1990s and try to buy ourselves into a franchise quarterback. But that's just how I feel.
So I agree with all you guys, but I'm going to take it a step further. Like Chris, would I want Lamar Jackson as our quarterback? Sure. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think we would be more successful with him. But when you're paying a quarterback a large salary like that, post rookie deal, part of the way that you maintain your roster is you draft well and you have other skill positions on your rookie deals. So if you then trade 2 first-round picks away, you've now eliminated your ability for top 32 talent on your team on a rookie contract, whether that be O-line, whether that be left tackle, whether that be corner. You pick your poison there. So now you've downgraded your ability, or you've removed your ability to upgrade your team. You add your quarterback, which is the hardest position in professional sports, the hardest to find. But you've now severely hampered the remainder of the roster. Now, if it was just Lamar Jackson and he was walking the street, that would be one conversation to be had. I probably wouldn't be thrilled about it, but it would be a lot more tangible. You know, the taste would be a little better if we were to make a play for him. But it's the contract, it's the injuries, and it's the giving up of multiple years of ones. And to take it even further than that, I'm tired of handing our new head coach their starting quarterback.
Yep.
Okay, so even if it's Lamar Jackson, it doesn't matter who it is. We all believe that chances are Rivera's not here in 24, right? I think we can all. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that that's a legitimate that's legitimate. So Rivera goes out. The new owner comes in. You would hope he would hire a GM. That GM would then be able to hire his coach. That coach would then be able to build his staff, and they would be able to pick their quarterback. If Sam Howell is the guy that they have to move on from, no harm, no foul. But if you've got to find a way to eat $150 million guaranteed in Lamar Jackson because he doesn't fit in the offense that your guy wants to run, or you hinder the offensive coordinator or the head coach because now they're stuck with a quarterback that they're forced to build a team, an offense around, as opposed to building the offense for the whole 11.
Well, and Derek, you brought up
another
another point, which is there's no guarantee. And here's the thing: if you're going to guarantee a salary, you better have guaranteed results. And there's no guarantee that you take Lamar Jackson out of what. Let's be honest, that is a hell of a coaching staff in Baltimore. They're good every year, even when they're not good, they're good.
That offense is completely built for Lamar Jackson.
Right, and you pluck him out of that. You put him in a totally different offense with different. Like, what good is it to have an elite wide receiver core when you have a quarterback that isn't a throw first quarterback? Obviously he's been very successful, so I'm not taking anything away from him, but I just don't think it's an automatic. It's not Madden. I know fans want to make it Madden, like it's Lamar Jackson. Well, you saw RG3, right? It worked great for a year, and then what happened? Teams figured it out, and it didn't work anymore. And it's not Madden, so you have to think long and hard before you just make some like massive investment in a guy because he's the hot, available player of the year or whatever. So
we talk a lot about Griffin, and I see the similarities. I liken him more to Cam Newton, right? And when Cam Newton's game dropped off a cliff at a certain point in his life because he couldn't do the same.
He took a beating. Anymore. He took a beating, man.
Exactly. And Lamar Jackson is taking the same beating. He is now 26 years of age. He is taking the same beating. How many more years is he going to be able to take this beating before he can't do the things that make him Lamar Jackson anymore? So you sign him to this massive contract for 5-6 years, guaranteed money. Now he's 30 or 31. How many of those years is he going to be Lamar Jackson? And how many of those years is he going to be a shell of Lamar Jackson, trying to do the things that Lamar Jackson made famous? And I'm not, I'll take my lumps with Sam Howell. I see too many good things in the young man as is. And he's to steal something from English soccer, he's one of our own, right? We drafted him. This is the only place he's ever played. If we treat him right, the way maybe we should have Kirk Cousins, maybe he plays here his whole career. Maybe he's that guy. I don't know. But what I do know is if we sign Lamar Jackson, we will never know what Sam Howell is going to be. Because once you pay a guy that much money, he's starting in the NFL. You don't bench a guy if you're paying him $40 or $50 million a year, which means Sam Howell will play out his rookie contract here as a backup and go somewhere else.
If things stay as they are now, the next couple seasons in the NFC East are going to be interesting from a roster building economic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Howell ends up playing and doing well enough, we're looking at he's making an average of $1.3 million average over the next 3 seasons. New York's paying a lot more than that now. Dallas is
4 years, $160 million.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas is paying a lot more than that now, and Philly's going to have to pay Jalen Hurts a lot more than Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
We're going to be the only team in the division with a starting quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yep.
For at least 2 years.
Which is pretty exciting if he can play. I mean, that's
if he can play. If he can play.
The thing about Jones's contract, it's 4 years, 160, but he'll never see the 160.
It's way more than that. The incentives apparently are like insane. So it's like there's like another 40 million in incentives.
35, yeah.
Or something. So
it's not 160 guaranteed.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, but Derek, it doesn't matter. He's the guy this year, and he's going to carry a big cap number this year, which
it's like upwards of 19 million. I don't think it goes above 19 million for the 4 years, but that's still a big chunk of your.
But then they tagged Saquon, didn't they?
I said 19 million. I meant 19% of their salary cap.
Yeah. Right. And then they tagged Saquon. That's like an $11 million hit this year.
Yep.
So between those two guys, they're tying up they're tying up superstar quarterback money between those two guys.
And then Dallas is the same.
Yeah.
Dallas is in the same situation. They've got Prescott's contract. They just tagged Pollard for 10 million. They got Ezekiel.
Yep.
And one thing that's interesting is they've got next week Dalton Schultz hits, unless they work something out, which I don't know how they can with the money they've already spent, but Dalton Schultz hits free agency. Vander Esch, who hits free agency, and Donovan Wilson, their safety, hits free agency. So that's 3 big players they could lose.
I got to guess Ezekiel Elliott's gone.
You think he's June 1 cap hit?
Yeah, I think he's gone. He's like a $20 million, $19, $20 million contract.
Yeah, but how much do they actually save?
Yeah, I was just pulling that up too, Derek. I was looking for it right now.
I mean, he's definitely one of those guys where he's like on the down slope here. You'd think they would be looking to get him out of there.
16.72, and he's an almost $12 million dead cap hit if they cut him.
Yeah, per spot track. Yep.
Gonna have to be a big.
And that's still just the 5th highest paid guy on the team. Dak Prescott's a $49 million hit this year. DeMarcus Lawrence is a $26 million hit. Zach Martin, who may or may not have been brilliant this last year, is almost 20 million. And Tyron Smith is 17.5. And of course, now you've got 2 running backs in Dallas in the top 8 salaries.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams in the league don't have 1 running back in the top 8 salaries. Washington doesn't.
Well, and you look at the franchise tag for running backs. I mean, I don't know if it caught your guy's eye, but I mean, even though running backs have been had a resurgence as far as importance in offense,
not that kind of money.
$10 million for an exclusive franchise tag. That's not that much in today's NFL. It's like chump change compared to quarterbacks, right? I mean, and they've got 2 guys making that.
But even so, I'm not sure I want to put that much money on my running back.
No, you're right.
It's, running backs for most teams are plug and play. Good Lord, look at the Cleveland Browns. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Were like 5 deep on the depth chart, and their 5th guy, who had been waiting tables in July, was ripping off 100-yard games against NFL defenses.
And you look at what, like, we plug Brian Robinson in, and he looks, I mean, there's not that big of a learning curve like there are with some positions. You draft some guy and plug him in there, and he looks great. I mean, it's not that hard to replace him, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, not unless the guy's going to play third down and have to do blitz pickups. And Robinson, by and large, isn't doing that. So
if you go to overthecap.com, you can actually designate between a pre and post June 5th or June 1st cut. It's actually a pretty cool tool if you want to look at it. According to this, Zeke, a post June 1 cut is an almost $11 million savings. I have a hard time. I'm with Chris. I have a hard time believing he's on the roster week 1.
Well,
Yeah.
it's Jerry, man. You don't know. Jerry world is not like, our world. So
then he might restructure and play for $1 million, and Jerry, sells him a briefcase full of cash for 50 cents. What kind of shenanigans he can pull behind the scenes, who knows? But
so what were you guys' thoughts on? We were the first team to apply the franchise tag this offseason with Daron Payne. What do you guys think of that? Are you okay with that, or what do you think?
I don't know what the rush was for, why we did it with day one. I thought because it was so early that there was a trade in place, honestly. I still kind of hope there is a trade in place because we've already been talking about how I've already mentioned that I think it's going to, we all kind of believe that this might be a resetting year, maybe a down year. I don't think Payne on this roster is the difference between us being a contender and not being a contender. So why are you going to pay him a 1-year deal and pay him not just starter defensive tackle money, starter defensive lineman money? I mean, he's up there. He's getting paid the same up there with the top 3 or 4 D linemen in the league. And he had a hell of a year, but why pay that? You're allowed to roll over money. And if you can get a return, chances are he's not going to sign back here, or you're going to have to overpay him. And again, you're doing something that I don't want you to do, which is creating an issue that your next head coach and GM are going to have to figure out. Now, Ron Rivera probably doesn't give a shit about the next head coach. He cares about his job and setting himself up for success. But I think it was early and fast, and I don't know.
I feel like Payne's trade value is far greater than his on the field value. That's how I feel. But I mean, that's just how I feel.
Well, and I think I want to agree with you, John. I'm not sure whether it is or not. I mean, I was a little blown away to hear John Keim a couple of weeks ago on his podcast say that he heard from another NFL franchise, a franchise that offered the Washington team a 2nd-round pick for Daron Payne last year before the draft. I'd have taken that 2nd-round pick and run. I'd have taken that pick and run last year. And is he worth more than that this year? He should be. But
or is that just a calculation that they thought he would be worth more, after his contract year? Which
but John, look, man, like we've been saying it since day one on this podcast. Us, armchair quarterbacks have been saying you can't pay them all. You got to make a decision. No. You can't pay them all.
I'm 100% with you, man. I really am.
I do wonder, not to take anything away from Payne, he had a really good season, but I wonder what he's going to look like when he's not next to an all-pro. Okay,
or playing in a contract year.
I
know there are some on BGO who claim he's been solid all 4 years.
He has. He's been solid.
He's been good.
Solid. He's been solid. He has been a starting defensive tackle.
He's just
not a top 3.
He has not played up to expectations until this last season. Is that fair?
I'll give anybody the adjective solid. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is paying a solid defensive tackle Jonathan Allen money. I'm just not. I'm not. And granted, the sample size is very small. I wrote a long post about this and then deleted it before I put it up because I didn't want to start a firestorm with anybody.
Come on, man.
No, I didn't. But I went back and looked at the history of the two of these guys playing together in the NFL. Daron Payne has played without John Allen for 3.5 games. In those 3.5 games, he has 0 sacks. He has 2 tackles for a loss. He has like 5 quarterback hits. He disappears. He becomes an average defensive tackle. Now, detractors, guys that disagree with me are going to say, well, we used him differently before we got rid of Sam Mills. And there may be some truth to that, that the new defensive line coaches, Kerrigan, and I can't even pronounce the head defensive line coach's name.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. But they definitely created some different looks for the defensive line this year, and I get that. But what I also get is that Daron Payne has been very, very vocal about show me the money. For 4 years, he's been a solid defensive tackle. This year, he became a rock star defensive tackle because he saw the light at the end of the tunnel to get a 25, 30, $40 million bonus at one shot. He wants the one shot. Once he gets it, what's he going to be? And I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. And I'm not willing to burn $40 million to find out. I'm perfectly willing to let him go somewhere else, sign a massive contract, and be a rock star there, or be yet another hungover free agent guy that somebody thought was motivated who isn't motivated.
And here's the thing. Here's the benefit of spending 2/3 to 3/4 of your draft picks on defense for 4 years in a row. You don't have to fucking make desperation decisions. Like, I'm pretty sure if we trade him for whatever we can get for him, we're going to be just fine. We got Darian Mathis, we've got Montez Sweat, we've got John Allen, who's probably the most underrated player in the league, and that's saying something because he's pretty well regarded. We have spent a shit ton of assets on that D line. We don't need him. If we can get something really good for him and draft a linebacker with it, or draft an O lineman, for God's sake, that's okay. It's all good. Somebody else, he'll play well for somebody else, but it's not going to cripple us.
No.
So, anyway.
Oh, I agree completely. I think, and we watched the same thing with when the defense was better when Chase Young was out. The defense was better when Sweat was out. I believe this defense is effective in schematics, and you have the interior push. And we didn't even get to see our 2nd round pick last year. He was on the field for 30 seconds and his knee exploded. So add to that, Danny.
I don't know that it exploded, but yeah,
whatever, it blew up. Whatever, he tore his ACL. But add to that, guys like James Smith-Williams, Daniel Wise, guys we have all watched come in and be effective when asked to do so. So if you sign Payne, I think we're severely, just like Jackson, you're severely hindering your ability to build the rest of the roster by dedicating. What would that end up being? Somewhere close to 20% of your cap to 2 starting defensive tackles? I thought about it. If you picked up Chase Young's 5th year option, you signed Daron Payne to the deal he wants, because now he's getting $18 million this year. That's the floor. You better believe his agent's going to go to the team and say, all right, well, we're starting at 18 million, we're at 18 million a year. Where are you going to go from there? Like, that's so between the 2 of those guys alone would be almost $30 million or over $30 million in 2024.
I'm looking at the numbers right now, right? 1 and 2 on our list this year, as it stands, as contracts stand at the moment. 1 and 2 are John Allen and Daron Payne for what we're going to pay this year on this team. Now, we all know that those numbers are going to change between now and the beginning of the season. Our top 10 includes our 4 starting defensive linemen. No other team in our division can say that. In fact, they all have starting offensive linemen in their top 10.
And we have
more
one
starting offensive linemen than starting defensive linemen in their top 10 salaries.
Sorry, we have
inverted,
2.
and we finished last. So
Derek, you mentioned
quarterback.
when we start talking about Payne, you mentioned like expecting that they were tagging him to trade him, and that was my assumption as well. But do you guys think that's still on the table, or is Del Rio so like determined to have Payne on the roster that that's not going to happen?
Go ahead, Derek.
I mean, I think it's still possible. I don't know that I was left feeling the same way I was feeling when we drafted Mathis. When we were in the BGO chat on draft day, when we drafted Mathis, I was like, oh, they're going to trade Payne. Payne's gone. Just wait. The phone call's coming. And it didn't. So at this point, it wouldn't shock me if we did go into next year, because we talked about short term. Rivera is going to worry about winning as many games as he possibly can in 2023. And if that's the case, he probably believes he can win more games with Payne than without him.
Yep, you're right.
I don't agree, because I think if you can get a second for Payne and you can flip that into a starting guard, I think you're going to win more football games that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think
you're right. That's got to be a big factor in it,
especially with basically a rookie quarterback who has to start behind that guard.
Go ahead, Chris. I know.
Derek, do you mean this year? Like select a rookie in the second round this year, and he's going to have more impact on the team than Daron Payne in his first NFL season?
Yeah, because I think I think the upgrade at guard, if you upgrade to starter, is greater than the downgrade at defensive tackle.
I mean, I think part of it is
could play. I mean, who knows? I mean, it would be a young guy playing his first games ever in the NFL, and he's going to come in and have the impact at that position that's going to equal a veteran on the other side.
I don't think it's insane to keep Payne for a year on whether you're overpaying for him or not. We could be totally right, like they don't need him, but I can totally understand why they might feel like they don't really know what Mathis can do, especially coming off of ACL. Chase Young, we want to cross our fingers that that's not a total fucking like epic disaster of a pick, but we don't know yet what he's going to be like totally healthy, or if he can be totally healthy. So I don't really fault them for saying, you know what, let's just bite the bullet. We'll overpay for Payne for another season, and then we'll circle back around a year from now and figure out what we're going to do. But
why?
I mean, I just said why, but I think
part of it, Chris, to your point, Chris, this year, the argument can be made, but the long-term health of the team.
I'm trying to tie it together with Ron Rivera needing to win and to keep his job.
No, that's why I said I think he could go into it with Payne, because he's thinking 2023 period.
I fully expect that we invest a minimum of 2 draft picks this year on the offensive line, and hopefully 3, for God's sake.
I hope.
But even if they do, by the end of the year, they're not going to be the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. They're all going to be fucking rookies. So
yeah, but
you gotta win this year. You gotta put people on the field that are going to make an impact this year.
This isn't the same league it used to be. I was struck by something that one of the commentators, and I want to say it was the former tight end from Carolina during Greg Olson during the 49ers playoff game where they lost to Philadelphia. And he was talking about something that Bud Grant said at one point in time to one of his coaches. You lose one game for every rookie you start. This isn't that league anymore. Rookies come into this league every year and make established rock star veterans look sad. Chris Paul couldn't even make the roster, couldn't even make the game day roster most of the season. He started the last game of the year and took DeMarcus Lawrence, an all-pro tackle from Dallas, right out of the game. Just kept him out of the game almost single-handedly most of the game. I kind of expect a second-round draft pick to be able to come in and do something similar, not necessarily all season long. He's going to have a bad game here or there, but I can totally see giving up Daron Payne. The net gain for the team, which is what Derek was really talking about, is the uptick on offense being greater than the loss on defense, because we do have Fedarian Mathis, assuming, of course, he comes back from the knee completely. And did anybody see the Twitter post this week about Mathis and Daron working out together with a private coach? So
with the Alabama strength coach, I think.
But you also have to look at, are we drafting the right guys? Like we drafted Sadiq Charles. We've drafted lots
not
of
this regime.
We drafted guys that really, when you look at them, they're just like man. They're man.
Charles was the
last.
Sadiq Charles was the last regime.
Yeah,
not Ron
and
Rivera.
Charles Leno was a free agent.
But it's not like we can't, it's not like we have no draft picks. It's not like we can't address the offensive line without, if we don't trade Daron Payne for a second. We can do both.
No, we can do both. But I just, I don't know. I
don't see Payne signing here beyond 2023. So I start to ask we might differ, but that begs the question: is it worth paying a guy that kind of money and not reinvesting it elsewhere that will be here beyond the end of next year?
Would anyone disagree with this statement? We overcommitted assets to the D line.
To the D line, absolutely.
In the draft.
No, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, what I posted it today, right? We spent 5 straight years. We put our first round draft pick into the defense for those defensive linemen.
And for the beginning of those years, we were screaming to do exactly that.
Right. So it's not a bad.
But then it kind of just kept.
It's not
nobody was more excited about John Allen than I was. And then we turned around and did the same thing with Daron Payne the next year. And I was still excited, although admittedly, I kind of scratched my head a little bit. 2 defensive tackles? Really?
And some of that goes back to best player available, which all fans claim to be a fan of until you actually do it.
Until you do it, right.
Like, I'm pretty sure, am I wrong? But I think we traded up to grab Montez Sweat.
Yeah, because we took Haskins. And then
we didn't need him, but we're like, holy shit, we could get him. So we did. So, I mean, that's the problem. It's like in the short term, best player available sometimes makes you look like a dumbass. But in the long term, it might be the right thing to do. I don't know. Whether you keep the players or trade them for the value that they have. But I just feel like we could trade him and we'd be just fine on the D line and we could get some really good assets.
The only reason I'm okay with it at this point in time, and it's something you wrote on the board, John, you said, look, you tag him because you can't let an asset like that walk for nothing.
Which we have done.
We've done, which I was a proponent of letting him walk for nothing. I'll be honest. I was a proponent for just letting him go. Let him be somebody else's headache.
Was that prior to last year? Was that prior to the 2020s?
No, that was this year. That was me watching him stand in the offensive backfield how many weeks and mime signing a check. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have no use for that mentality, because my fear is when that's the mentality, what happens when you get the big check? We've seen it.
He's not John Allen. I think that's a fair statement.
Right. John signed his big contract and came to work with a lunchbox in hand and did the same thing, right? Yeah.
And all he did was improve.
Yeah, all he did was improve. And I don't know. I looked at it and I look at the overall numbers. Right now, as the contracts stand, we have over $60 million invested in our 2023 salary cap in defensive linemen. And I don't think that's a recipe for success.
So there's some ownership stuff swirling around out there. Last night, maybe there was an ownership meeting in Palm Beach, which apparently resulted in nothing. At least what we hear is that they basically said, well, we don't know what they said, but there was no dramatic announcements of the league is pressuring Dan Snyder to sell or anything else. If anything, to me, it felt like they kind of like when they gave him additional powers as an owner when he was being investigated. It kind of felt like that, where it's not like there's not a lot of league pressure, and maybe that means that the sale is impending and inevitable, and so there's no need to put public pressure on him. and Chris pointed out before, despite rumors, apparently Lord Farquaad, as I like to call him, did not bother showing up for the ownership meeting. He sent his wife, probably because he's a gutless, spineless, SOB, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, nothing appears to be like impending on the sale of the team. Other than that, according to John Keim, Bezos is still in the mix. Josh Harris is in the mix, and Tillman Fertitta is also in the mix. And according to Keim, there are 2 mystery bidders that we do not know who they are. According to Keim, which again, I'm not sure where he's getting his information, but he may be 100% correct. But I listened to his pod today with Rick Snyder, and so there are 5, assuming that Bezos is not just legitimately, out of the mix because Tanya Snyder and Daniel Snyder are not going to consider any bids from him. Assuming that's not the case, we're looking at 5 different owners right now, possibly.
It's been really quiet since the ESPN article broke. The Don Van Natta story broke. There was a little activity for a few days, and now it's like all the doors have been slammed shut.
And we're like 2 weeks from the ownership, the big owners meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So the wagons have been circled, and there's good news at the end, or the wagons have been circled and there's bad news coming. But there's something going on.
Well, I think one theme that you do still hear from everybody reporting on this is that we have passed the point of no return, that Dan Snyder's he can't not sell the team. So
it's whether he goes out kicking and screaming and trying to drag people with them or not.
Right. And unfortunately it looks like it might linger into the summer, beyond where, because I'm sure we all everybody here and everybody that has ever donned these colors the vast majority would love to go to sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow, and then see that breaking news that there's been an agreement put in place. But
so I'm in the camp, and I could be totally wrong because that's what I do, but I could be totally wrong. I feel like the NFL has probably told him this has to happen before the ownership meeting. Like, it has to get done. We plan on meeting and voting on it in 2 weeks, and so make it happen. I could be totally wrong, but I just don't think the NFL wants this to go on and on. And I don't know. I said this on the board. I feel like in the next 2 weeks we're going to know something. I hope I'm right, because as a fan, I'm like hanging on by a thread. Like, I don't know if we have Dan Snyder as our owner going into the opener in 2023, I'm mailing my check. I'm sending my badge in to HR. I'm done, man. I just can't keep doing it. And I think there's a lot.
The White investigation has to be completed, right? I mean, it's been 13 months. It's got to be done, right?
Right. Well, whatever they know, they have to know at this point. So I just feel like maybe like they're just working out the final details, and we're going to know something in the next couple of weeks. I hope to God that that's the case, but I could be totally wrong.
Just for shits and giggles, I went and looked up the league calendar because I was curious. If we do not have an announced sale in time for it to be voted on in March, the next league meeting is May 22nd through the 24th, which means we're through draft and we're through the beginning of OTAs.
But they can call an emergency.
They can call a meeting anytime they want.
They can. As I've said multiple times, Roger Goodell absolutely has the power to call a meeting over an ownership change. Roger Goodell has never done that, even though there have been numerous instances where it would have been advantageous to the league. He has not done it. They have left this. He has always left this question for league meetings that are on the calendar.
I think Goodell wants rid of Snyder just as bad as we all do.
They to be honest, they kind of want it done with Jerry Richardson too. It was much more low key, But the situation in Carolina was relatively embarrassing from a number of standpoints. And even so, Goodell refused to call a meeting to vote on the change from Richardson to Tepper.
Does he never get called into a congressional hearing for that?
Well, no, that's true. You're absolutely right. And Jerry Richardson was much more, shall we say, accommodating as far as the league was concerned, and honorable, I guess, would probably be a pretty good way to put it. Richardson was much more willing to fall on his sword. Dan isn't falling on his sword. Dan's trying to push a whole bunch of other people onto the sword with him, is what he's trying to do. But
do you guys think Bezos is really out? Do you think Snyder? I said this on the board, and I think this is a pretty good way of putting it. Does Snyder's pettiness outweigh sheer greed? Because to me, that concept is almost, I just can't absorb that, because I think his whole life has been nothing but greed. So whether what his wife thinks or not, if Bezos comes in and says, I'll give you $1 billion more than that other guy, I just cannot imagine Snyder saying, fuck you, because you said nasty things about.
I don't even think it would take $1 billion. I mean, if all the rumors are true, we already know that Snyder's in debt for the buyout of his minority partners.
Right? 1 billion or something like that.
Well, no, I haven't gotten to that yet, right? So, theoretically, from what we hear, he's in debt to Bank of America for $1 billion. God knows for what. But all total, the guy could be in debt up to $2 billion at this point in time, if the rumors I'm reading in the newspaper are true. Understand, those are rumors. No one has substantiated anything. But if that's the case, I very much remember Dan Snyder very defiantly telling the entire world, we will never rename this team. And when the economic pressure came down, we renamed the team. I think if Jeff Bezos is the high bid at the end of the day, Jeff Bezos will be the new owner of this team. If Bezos wants the Washington franchise, I think Bezos will get it. Snyder may not be happy about it, but I think in the end, he will sell to whoever is the highest bid, because at the end of the day, Dan wants the money. He's not getting all of it. A lot of this is going to go to pay off debt. So he's got to, if he wants to be super wealthy, he's kind of got to maximize what he gets for it so that he can hang on to as much as possible, right?
John, to answer your question, I for the longest time, I thought the answer is money. And if Bezos pays the most, he takes it. But in the last 2 weeks, I'm going to switch my vote and say that his pettiness outweighs his greed.
Wow.
Because there's been so many reports that they won't even accept a bid from Bezos. Now, I don't know if they're true. I don't know who's leaking what to who, what the sources are for the person giving out the thing, and what the reason for those leaks are. But it's been building along that same road with no off ramps.
With also rumors that Jerry Jones met with Bezos on some island, with the assumption that he's trying to sell him on, look, do the right thing, or trying to help him bridge whatever the barrier is with Snyder. And I'm with you, Chris. It sounds like more and more like it's, no matter what Bezos offers, they're not going to accept it. But
well, the other thing is Bezos might not actually blow him away, because he's going to have another shot in Seattle in a year.
Maybe a year. Maybe a year.
And that franchise will probably go for,
less
comparable money. I'm not going to say necessarily less. And I only say comparable because of the cost of the stadium. That if we had a full stadium, and we didn't have facilities that we had to invest in and some other things, I don't think it comes close. But let's be real, guys. As much as I love this franchise, we are not what we were in the 90s, man. Like
No.
the value is, while the value has gone up, it has not gone up at the same rate that it could have. So
It's potential value you're investing in, really.
so
What do you guys think about Harris and Tillman for I don't know if it's Fertitta. I need to learn that, but
Not till he owns the team, you don't, John.
what's that?
You don't have to learn it till he owns the team.
That's true. But what do you guys think about? And I posted this on the board. Like, okay, the Antichrist is the owner. Does it matter who the successor to the Antichrist is, or should we not? I mean, should we worry about that or not at all? Like Josh Harris and Tillman Fertitta. Sorry.
well, let's be real.
Last chance for them to get this right. This is my last chance for them to get this
I was
right.
gonna say the same thing. Like
In your
I mean-
lifetime, you mean?
In my lifetime, yes.
I'm younger than you guys.
Snyder kept it 20 years, so you know.
I'm younger than you guys. I'm 38. This is probably the last owner that I'm gonna see.
What are you saying, Derek?
Saying that the four of us are not gonna see another ownership change after this one.
He's saying that you, me, and Chris have a foot in the grave, John. That's what he's saying.
I had a
No, I did
colonoscopy
not say
on
that.
Monday,
What I
so
said was
I already know that, but thanks.
what I said was that I'm the youngest one on here, and I know that I'm not. So, yes, we should care about who the next owner is. Yes, we should care about that they're somebody we want to root for. Yes, we should care about all of that stuff because this is the last time that we're gonna do this. I mean, like,
Probably.
right. I heard people say Harris has the history in owning a sports franchise. But someone like Fertitta has a lot of history in customer service and relations.
So Fertitta's.
Rockets.
So I just want to throw this out there. Fertitta, I love this because I'm a big service guy. That's just been my history in healthcare. Because trust me, service in healthcare is a big deal. And Fertitta's favorite expression is "there are no spare customers," which that is the most anti-Dan Snyder sentiment ever expressed. Like, in other words, Snyder has operated under the assumption that there are always more suckers that will buy tickets, no matter how fucking badly I abuse them or make them into fools. There's always more fools down the road. So I love that. I will say that about him. That's his kind of like driving philosophy is there are no spare customers. So
Well, Snyder is there. There's never a lack of my customers that I'll sue if I need to.
there are almost no customers for Snyder. It's like, forget about spare customers.
I still can't stop laughing at the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company thing. But
Well, that's not the only.
I'm behind this guy because he owns the Bubba Gump Shrimp
Fried
Company.
shrimp,
Great.
boiled
not-
shrimp,
That's
steamed
not
shrimp,
why I would say that I would be behind him. He also owns some pretty.
sauteed shrimp.
Well, he
He
owns the
owns-
Houston Rockets. You know, as far as sports experience, you know, I mean, Harris is with the 76ers and a little bit with the Devils and a little bit with the Steelers, I believe.
I just wonder if either of these guys can afford this franchise because Josh Harris, like in 2021, his estimated net worth was $7 billion, and Fertitta in 2022 was estimated to be worth $7.6 billion. So it's like that's not that far away from the asking price, you know.
And this is one of the this is the tack that I've taken all along. Yeah, it matters from a moral standpoint. It matters from a winning standpoint. This franchise needs somebody with some honor to pull it out of the gutter, right?
Amen.
Losing's a whole lot easier to take if you're doing it honorably than the way we've been doing it for the last 20 years. And yet here we are, right? But I've looked at this from the financial standpoint. These guys are, without selling assets that they currently own, these guys are going to be hard pressed to stroke a check big enough to be the minority or be the majority owner of this club. You know, the NFL's got some fairly specific rules in place. And if we're talking about a $7 billion price tag, we're talking about these guys having to pony up somewhere between 1.5 and $2 billion in a check to buy the team. This isn't debt that they're taking on. They have to be able to front that money immediately. And then they got to figure out how to get it back. And this is a franchise that currently is scraping bottom of the barrel in the NFL as far as how much it's net, at the end of the year. I want to say I saw a couple of weeks ago that Washington was, net revenue or net profit at the end of the year was like $140 million. Well, how much of that you're going to have to throw at your debt to try and get out of debt? And how long is it going to take you to get out of debt? At the end of the day, these guys are business guys. And that's before we start talking about all of the repairs and upgrades that obviously have to be made to Ashburn after the revelations of the last week regarding the NFLPA players.
Oh yeah.
That we haven't even talked about, right? I mean,
Thank you, Bob. Yeah.
We what, 31 or 32?
No, we were 32 of 32, baby. Woo!
Right. And then the stadium. And even if you stop and go, well, a new owner is going to get Virginia or Maryland or DC or whoever to pitch in and help out with the stadium. They're not gonna bankroll it 100%. The owner's gonna have to pull something out of his pocket. How much is he gonna have left if he's just stroked a check for 1.5 or $2 billion? Both of those guys have a significant amount of their net worth tied up in NBA basketball teams. That's 3 to 5 million, depending upon which team and how much it's valued at, of their net worth in the team. Are they going to sell the team? Are they going to sell part of the team? That complicates purchasing Washington. I don't know. Right now, none of the names that I see thrown around except Bezos excite me. And the only reason Bezos excites me is because I know he's got the money.
So maybe we're looking at like the Jay-Z, Matthew McConaughey, Christopher Walken, Beyonce group. It's like this team, it's so big. It's incredible. I just have to buy it. I don't know. Maybe we're looking at some group that we don't even know about yet coming in.
More cowbell. What I need now is some more cowbell.
It's so big. It's so luxurious.
The report card that came out, from the NFLPA, I didn't even realize that you could have an F-. Didn't know there was anything below.
None of us had bottomed out to that degree yet.
Yeah, well, we have now. Thank you.
Oh yeah, F, but F-? What the fuck? That's kind of harsh. Don't you guys think though? I thought this when I read those rankings. I just feel like it's kind of like when you do a safety survey at work. Like I don't know what you guys do for a living, but you do a safety survey, and then next thing you know, all the comments are about like your fucking shit ass manager who treats everyone badly, or your like, the locker room never has like soap in the hand dispensers, or it's kind of like when you're in the shithole, no matter what you ask people, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be like we're terrible. Like, and I wonder if the players don't feel that. Like it's like we're in like the joke NFL franchise. So like if you ask us any survey at all, give us a survey, we're shitting all over you. I don't know if anyone else thought that, but that's kind of what I thought. It's like maybe it's not as bad as what the survey said. It's more a reflection of the general feeling of the players of like, you know what? We'd like to be part of a franchise that's not an embarrassment and not always, trashed on social media and by other fans. And I don't know. I wonder.
They like the strength coach though.
They do like the strength coach.
He's probably
how long
handing out edibles.
How long have we been at the Ashburn facility?
God.
Oh, a long time, man. I mean, when I was covering the team,
It was in Herndon.
that was in 2000, and they'd been there at least like 5 years. I mean, it had to be like mid
Yeah, I
90s.
want to say it was early. It was probably mid to late mid 90s, maybe.
So what I'm getting at is this facility was built pre Dan Snyder.
I don't know about that, Bob, but that's a good question.
I just, I feel like if significant upgrades were being made, that would be one of those things that Dan Snyder would trot out to the local media to brag about. And I don't remember the last time they talked about significant upgrades to the Ashburn facility.
That's because he's putting $4.5 million stickers on his plane instead of snaking out the drains and fixing the hot
I mean,
water.
it looked pretty fucking good in like 2002 when I was like roaming around in the building, but beyond that, I can't speak.
Yeah, but which then begs the question: how many teams in the NFL are still in the facility they were in 2002?
Well, and I think that
Dan
Snyder's
Snyder-
reputation as one of the richest guys on the planet, and then not having like a top tier. I mean, it's one thing to say our teams suck perennially, and we can't find a franchise quarterback, but to not have the best facilities, that if you're a rich guy, that doesn't. I don't think that reflects well.
But he
Jerry,
has $50 million homes.
two.
One in Maryland, one in Virginia, and what, a $200 million yacht. I mean, come on. That's chefs to pay.
There's only
Oh,
so
by
much
the
money
way,
to spend.
you can lease for a week if you'd like to take a ride on that yacht.
So
Yes,
I'm
no,
reading
no.
up from according to Rick Snyder. Allen liked the seclusion, but eventually the area he's talking about Chantilly was discovered and overrun. So the team moved its current facility in 1992, just after winning its third Super Bowl.
I was going to say, I thought this went back well before Dan, and it does. So this actually goes back to Jack Can't Cook.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, before electricity,
Jesus, I didn't even go there.
the Redskins training facility was a chain link in fenced field next to the DC jail and DC General Hospital, and just across the street from the stadium. They were lucky if they had buckets of water out there. So
And Vince Lombardi was the coach.
Do you guys buy what I'm selling there? That it's really a reflection of just overall the players feeling overall that they're part of a substandard organization that like
Absolutely.
doesn't. I mean, I really feel like you could take the Chiefs and plug them into our facilities, and it'd be like, yeah, this shit's great, man.
The Chiefs were 29th on the list. I'd like to see Terry McLaurin's form.
I think that John, I feel like you've got a valid point, but I don't think that explains 32nd and F minus.
I'm not trying to explain it away. I just think it's just maybe
I think it's a factor. I think
a
it's
larger issue.
Maybe we come up to 28, 27, right?
Like
without
my
that.
employer doesn't give a fuck about me. I think that's the larger issue I'm trying to shine a light on.
It's
The Chiefs, I believe, were 28th or 29th.
But I mean, come on. We were below the Jets. I'd be willing to bet you Alabama's got better training facilities than
100%.
Washington does.
It's not even close. Are you kidding me?
Please
Most
don't
of-
say that
most of
because
the
the only thing I'm clinging on to is we're better than the Jets. One of my best friends is a Jets fan, and we kind of go back and forth. We had a running gag like when our team wins the Super Bowl, we'll run around our facility naked. And sadly, it's never really come into play at all.
Aaron Rodgers is going to end up on the Jets, isn't he?
Maybe.
If that would be the most poetic thing in the world to see him just completely demoralize Brett Favre for how he went out, and then he just literally follows in his footsteps.
The whole
I hope it
management,
happens.
the whole management and ownership flew out to California to meet with him today.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Jets post-game press conferences would become must-see TV with
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers and the New York media. That would be just you can't miss that. That would lead Sports Center every night,
every Sunday.
Yep.
I
Except
picture
when the Jets
I
tell you
picture all
what-
the Jets executives like sitting like Indian style, like, yes, yes, Aaron, tell us what you need to like. I mean, it's kind of like, come out. No, I'm not going to come to New York. Like, you guys come out to California where I'm like hanging out this week, and we'll talk. But
all those executives with man bun wigs so they fit in with everyone. Oh man.
well, guys,
Hopefully we have an emergency pod coming up here shortly, but I guess we'll see what happens.
well, we got free agency coming like screaming
Next week.
So
Next week. What
it's
are we?
next-
We're down to what? 3 weeks or less than 3 weeks to the league meeting.
3 weeks. But free agency is literally 7 days away. 7 days from now, we will be 6 hours into free agency.
So we probably need to be talking about like who do we want in free agency.
But see, that's the thing is, I don't know. Like it's
Well, and I think it's deeper than who do we want. I think it's
what do you want?
what do we, the way contracts are written now, and Derek probably knows more than I do about this. So Derek, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but every guaranteed dollar has to go in an escrow account, right?
Correct.
Which means that the current owner has to stroke a check for every guaranteed dollar. Dan Snyder isn't going to want to do that.
But
America will give him some more money.
But don't you think that's going to be cooked into it? Like any deal he does, it's
It
not gonna
will,
be
but he
like,
still has to put the money up today.
I mean, that's chump change, though, man. You're talking
He
about like
doesn't have it.
$6
He just
billion.
got a loan. He
got
doesn't even have it.
$6 billion. I mean, talking about free agency contracts, he's not going to be like.
But he doesn't have the $6 billion yet. That's the problem.
Well, I think somewhere there's got to be a fund, Derek, that they're working out of, because correct me if I'm wrong, to franchise tag Daron Payne,
that's
they
what
had to
I
put that 18 million in escrow, right?
because it's fully guaranteed. I believe you're right.
Yeah. So somewhere along the line, somebody dropped 18 million in an escrow account for Daron Payne already.
Yeah, I don't think the Snyder situation has anything to do with. I mean, other than like what Derek has said, which is we may not pay like $150 million for,
Jackson.
quarterback.
Right.
Other than that kind of a deal, I think they're going to operate normally. But
I can almost guarantee you Snyder does not have the check he would have to write for Lamar Jackson's contract extension. I can almost guarantee. I would bet serious cash.
But they're gonna make some free agency deals. So the question is for who and for what kind of money.
Well, the biggest name that's going to be out there is Orlando Brown, the tackle from the
I
Chiefs.
think it's linebackers and O linemen in free agency.
Everybody is going to be connecting us with Orlando Brown. I guarantee it
Or
because he's a
cornerback.
former Chief.
But see why? Oh well,
Bieniemy.
Derek, Bieniemy, I can see. But here's the thing: of the 5 offensive linemen of the 5 positions this last year, I feel like left tackle might actually have been the strongest for the entirety of the season. It's those 3 interior positions that we just positively sucked at.
Well, and the other thing is we were asking our tight block Joey Bosa. It was isolating and making it look a lot worse than it really was. We were asking Leno to be on an island with Thibodeau after he had been abusing him for the entire game.
I think it was bad. I think it's bad regardless of the
Well,
play.
that's my point.
I think we need at least 3 offensive linemen.
And they're all interior to Bob's point. I think you moved on from Trey Turner. He was on a 1-year deal. I don't think you can count on Chase Rouillet. I mean, our best games, Tyler Larson was our starting center. You have to solidify the center position like that. I think a lot of the problem is that it's adjusting the protections, especially with a rookie quarterback. You need somebody snapping the ball that you trust, that can move that stuff around, identify it pre-snap, and set them up to succeed. To ask Sam Howell to do that and be a rookie quarterback for the sake of the argument is going to be a difficult task. So that's where, like, I look at, you were talking about immediate draft change last year. The Baltimore Ravens took Tyler Linderbaum in the first round, and they walked into the best rushing attack that we've seen in years. And I think he has a lot to do with it, beyond just his ability to block. The guy was the best interior lineman coming into the draft last year. So I think that makes a big difference. I think center is huge. We need to get Chase Rie might be a cap cut.
So what I think we should do coming into the next pod is we should each decide, like, what is our priority position if we could only make one free agency move, and who is a player we want to sign for that one position.
So in other words, next pod is you are the GM.
Yep. Sounds
It's
good to me.
I mean, we're literally
Chris looks excited about being the GM.
You're talking just free agency, right? Not free
Right.
agency.
yes.
Well, then we're gonna have to probably run it Monday, because Tuesday opens the legal tampering period. Correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think so.
So if we do it Wednesday, we might have already signed people.
Well, I vote center, and as long as the center has 2 usable legs.
Just remember, Rivera and Mayhew are going to do a special study this year in the off season to figure out why we keep getting the center hurt so much.
Monday at 4:00 is the beginning of the legal
right.
tampering period.
Well, I guess we'll talk Monday night then.
We'll shoot for Monday night. Oh, well, it's been a pleasure, boys. We just filled up like 80 minutes on basically nothing.
I'm so glad I pulled us together because I was
That's right.
alone.
Because we did 80 minutes because John doesn't want to go back to his empty house.
I'm here, baby.
All right, boys. It is a pleasure. Always a good time.
Good night.
I love you guys.